Welcome, everybody. This is Trampled Underfoot Podcast. Your hosts, Mark Lindsay and Eloy Escagedo. And how's everybody doing today? What's going on, Mark?
Oh, coming to you live from under the smogberry trees in beautiful Southern Oregon. Just hanging out. I'm, doing better than I deserve to be doing.
That's right, and don't you forget it.
Living the dream, man. Living the dream.
So yeah, we were talking behind the back in the green room, prepping with our notes and stuff like we do each and every week.
Right.
Setting to the side the things that we think are second tier, subpar, and leaving the good stuff on the top, stack of the deck.
Right.
And we do that each week for you guys. So, what's new? Is there anything interesting, strange, bizarre, normal that you have? And by the way, I love how that transition, like we have a stack of the best, and yet I'm asking you, so what's going on?
Yeah, really. So okay. Well, I see you're treading water, so I have one little thing to throw out there. And I remember this happening. You maybe not. Let's see. You might remember this. You were about 10 or 11 years old when it happened. It was April 27th. So that would be 35 years ago today. 1986 on HBO. All of a sudden, in the middle of the movie The Falcon and the Snowman, HBO's satellite signal got interrupted. And those color test bars that you used to see on the TV screen when like the TV channel was signing off for the night?
Mm-hmm.
It was one of those, but it had text on it. The words were, "Good evening, HBO, from Captain Midnight. $12.95 a month? No way." Then in parentheses at the bottom, Showtime and the movie channel Beware. And that signal ran for 4.5 minutes, then just disappeared, and the movie picked up from where it left off.
Would have left off, or where?
Well, the movie continued to play. This just interrupted the signal, and then when he shut that transmission off, the movie picked up.
So that's like one of the early, what do you call them, hackers?
Yeah, you might say that. Yeah, it basically what happened was there was a guy arrested for it. He overrode the HBO satellite signal because a few months before this, HBO and Showtime and the movie channel and a few other, cable TV premium services, they started scrambling their signal. So this goes back about 10, 15 years before that, when somebody, and I still don't remember who it was, there were a couple of pioneers of this, discovered that you could build your own satellite dish in your backyard. If you knew what you were doing, you could receive these signals that were being beamed down to your local cable company, and you could pick up all these services for free. And that started a satellite dish frenzy. And people who were out in the country who had a clear line of sight could find these satellites and aim the dish and start intercepting, get free HBO, get free Showtime and movie channel and Cinemax and all these others, all the premium services. And they could also pick up regular network feeds. Because, like, for instance, the Johnny Carson show, The Tonight Show, was shot at like 5 o'clock in the evening and then gone through and edited and then broadcast later on in the evening. Well, the West Coast got that feed at about 6 in the evening. And you could just sit there, you could watch that. You could intercept all these satellite signals. And there was no law against it. You had to have specialized equipment to do it. So people were doing it. And it was kind of a way to bypass the cable companies and just get all this free stuff. Well, the cable companies, as well as the networks, they kind of got their acts together and they started scrambling the signals.
The scrambler.
Right. So you could buy a descrambler, but you had to still pay for the service because you had to enter a code to unlock it. And this guy, his name was John R. McDougal, using the pseudonym Captain Midnight. He ran a satellite dish store and installation service. And after all the other cable services started scrambling their signals, his sales just tanked. They just hit rock bottom.
Uh-huh.
So
he was raw.
Exactly. Oh, he was more than a little bit cheesed, So people could no longer get the broadcast for free. They stopped buying satellite dishes because they still then had to go get a descrambler and pay a monthly fee. Now, some folks out in the country who didn't get cable television, they did do that. They would buy the descrambler and then use that today, or use that as they are today with like Dish TV or what's the other one? I can't remember the other satellite service. Well, anyway, it doesn't matter. Dish Network. Before those two came along, people out in the country, it was kind of like a sign of being a redneck. You had to, if you had a mobile home with a satellite dish, you were a real redneck,
Yeah. So that's where it came from.
That's exactly where it came from.
The classic picture where the guy's sitting on a lawn chair or a couch outside, and there's this huge sometimes full of ice with beer in it.
Yeah. And that was the thing. You had to have a huge dish. They were like, 6, 8, 10, 12 feet wide.
They were huge.
Yeah. Yeah. Giant aluminum disc with a feed horn in the middle and the whole thing. But,
we had cable.
Yeah, we did too.
And I don't know that. I think it was an advance for us from regular TV. My dad decided on it, but he had the basic. And it was this plastic wooden, long rectangle type thing that had a cable attached to it. It was wired to the whatever on the TV, and it had these little push button buttons, and they go click when you press each one to change each channel, and that's what we had. I know there were different versions of it, but that's the one we had, and I found it so exciting to change just press the button and change the thing, because I know that remote controls. I did not know about remote controls in the house until way after that, because prior to that, obviously it was always changing but that was cool to do that. I don't remember that I was allowed much use of it. It was in the parents' room, and we had that. But I wonder if the programming that they had back then, if that was our only option now, like if they shut down the entertainment we have now and then they gave us the back then entertainment, how would we judge the quality of content, the quality of all that compared to what we know and have access to today?
Well, I people would, obviously they would have to adjust, but I don't think that the only difference that I can see would be it was appointment TV. You had to be on their schedule. Where now you could go to go to the streaming services, and if you want to watch, I don't know, if you want to watch the Brady Bunch, I'm sure there's a streaming service out there that has the Brady Bunch, and you can watch it right now, and you can get real picky and you can watch specific episodes right now. Back then, you were just kind of at their mercy.
Yeah.
So I think that's probably about the only thing that would be different. I mean, and this is assuming that we're talking about the network shows that are on now and are popular would still be there. Other than that, I don't know that there would be a whole heck of a lot of difference. I don't know. People, we are creatures of habit. And although we do want to have our way, we're also, most of us, not everybody in lockstep, but most of us, when we can't have our way and it's out of our control, we kind of understand that that's the way it is. Yeah. That no, you can't watch Bugs Bunny at 11 o'clock in the morning because it was on at 10. You know,
we're practical in that way. Although, like you said, I wouldn't say everyone, but you're given this and you deal with what you got. And I think that what other choice? But would people be calling it out as what a crappy trade-off? I mean, I'm sure.
Oh, I'm sure they would. Oh, sure they would. I mean, because once you've had something and then it's taken away, and I have some experience at that. When I went, one house we lived in Nevada, we got cable internet. Now, this is when cable internet was fairly new, especially in northern Nevada. It was 2 meg service. And I thought I was high speed, low drag, but you got to remember, I had just made that jump from 56K dial up. Right. And compared to 56K dial up, oh man, was it fast. It was blazing fast. So, I mean, over the course of the next year, it doubled. It went up to 4 meg service. Then we bought a house in another town about another 16 miles out. And that was one of the things that I asked and I looked for. Is there cable here? Yes, there is. Okay, great. I can get my cable internet and I'm a happy guy. We bought the house. We moved in. I called the cable company. She says, oh, we have cable TV out there, but we don't have cable internet out there.
Oh, great.
So I had cable internet for about 2 years. Then I had to go back to dial-up.
Oh, my goodness. Dude.
And this was in 2006. I had to go back to dial-up until 2011. So for the next 5 years, I was on dial-up. And I missed so much. I really did. I mean, YouTube had its explosion. Well, it was invented, then had its explosion. But at 56K, forget about video. You know, when it takes a half an hour to download a photograph, you know, you have to get picky about what you're going to watch and what you're going to do. But forget video. Well, when it finally came along, when we got it, it was 20 meg service in 2011. So I was once again a happy camper. So yeah, when you're given something and then it's taken away from you, it sucks big time. But you have to motor on with what you got, you know.
You sort of have to accept it, put it out of your mind. You know something's missing, but you have to find other ways to fill that gap, right?
Yeah, you have to work around it. I mean, it sucks. You don't have to like it, but you have to accept it.
Because there's no other choice, right?
You know, well, I could have gone with satellite internet, but that was so expensive. It was just cost prohibitive. You know? Yeah. Satellite internet was crazy expensive back then compared to what you were bringing home on a daily basis or a weekly basis, rather. So, yeah, it sucked bad. But now, could I go back to broadcast TV versus cable? I'll be honest with you. I don't watch a lot of broadcast TV. My wife does.
Right.
She would hate it. But the number of hours I spend watching broadcast TV per month, I can count on one hand and still have fingers left over. I mean, I just don't watch much at all.
I've not watched broadcast TV and I can't even remember. It just, because you can also get a lot of the things that happen with broadcast TV on the internet. It's like, you know, so
yeah.
I mean, at the end of the day, This is the dream, man. You
Well,
know, 100 years. Go ahead.
it kind of is. It
It
kind of
is.
is. I
It
mean,
freaking is, dude.
and you and I are examples of that. You can get into the streaming services and you can watch, like, we have talked about it before on the podcast, that series called Norseman. That's not even made in America. It's not even made for American audiences. And they were shocked at the series' popularity. It's made in, what is it, Norway.
Yeah.
And they were shocked at the show's popularity. And it was supposed to have been like maybe a 2-season thing, or a 1-season thing, and they got talked into a second season. Then they basically got bullied into a third season, and I don't know if there's going to be a fourth. But it's things like that we have available to us that would never have been available to us without it. So yeah, I'm all for it. I think it's great.
I mean,
Could I go back? I don't know. Would I want to? I don't think so.
no, is that even a question? I mean, do you even have to ponder it?
When
Come on.
When it comes to broadcast television, I could probably go back. I mean, I might miss 1 or 2 shows
Why so complacent? Dude,
because I just don't use it. I just don't watch it. It's kind of like asking me, okay, there are no more steam whistles. We have electric sirens. I just don't care because I don't use either one of them.
no, it's not like that. It's like saying there's no more. No, it's like saying there's no more steam whistles. So put your lips together and blow. That's your alternative. There's
Okay.
no. I mean, you're going from civilization to the stone age.
But I don't use either one, so I don't care. Fine, don't make any more steam whistles. I just don't care.
Yeah, I mean,
So, and I'm sorry for all the people that do use them. It's just not something that interests me. It's like, we no longer make 4-string banjos. We now only make 5-string banjos. Okay, fine. Go play that outside,
there's this situation that's talked about in music that also applies. There's commonalities with the music, which I'll tell you, and what we're talking about now with the advancement of technology and our access to so many things. So in the case of music, for music engineers and this and that, as time has progressed, as opposed to having, and they still do, the physical hardware plug and play, sort of anything from echo effects to compression to flangers and this and that, where they would have to purchase, and that went into the bill when musicians came in and played in the the recording studio, because the engineers had to acquire all these options for the musicians. And originally they didn't have that much gear. They had maybe a compressor. They had a room where they would channel the sound into, and it would vibrate and then exit back into the console. So you'd have some reverb and all these different things. But as we've gotten into like the digital era, they now have everything's digital, so they record digitally for the most part. There's some people that want to go retro and they do that, and but now they have digital plugins, so you can have, like me here in my home in Sweetwater, in the computer I have hundreds and hundreds of plugins, flanger effects, echo effects, compressors, EQs, delays, just brick wall compressors. It's just a whole slew of things. And so there's a thing that people talk about in the music circles, where we have too many options. So what they do is that they'll sit there with this slew of different options for recording a guitar part, and they're like, what do I choose from? Because when you're given too many options, all of a sudden you have to make that count. If you have like 2 effects, you know that you have to, delay and echo. But if you have like 2,000 different varieties, you start fiddling with it and you never get to the the point of it because you're focused on the process of, okay, which one? Well, not that one, and this. And that. Likewise with our internet and our entertainment, there's so much out there. Netflix alone, not to mention YouTube, which is gargantuan, and all the different, services. So I have found sometimes, and usually YouTube is the go to, because you'll cycle through a bunch of stuff that you didn't even know you wanted to see, and you probably didn't, but you ended up seeing it.
Yeah.
And then your movie streams, I've noticed that I'll sit there and I'll look, and there's all these options, and I'll start making judgment calls that I know aren't reasonable.
Right.
Like I'll start looking at the covers and like, no, that looks stupid. But maybe it's not. I'll think to myself, that looks stupid as heck. But you know what? Maybe it's not. I'll come around back to it, and maybe I'll check it out. I'll dig deeper. But let me go find. I'll do stuff like that, which is completely not the way you should if you want a good movie, depending on your. And yet I end up. So it's all these options that clutter. It's good to have, though. I prefer.
Sure. It's great. It's great to have a menu, but when the menu is the size of a phone book, and I know people out there are going, what the hell's a phone book? When you've got if there's more than 50 pages on a menu, you might as well not have it, because you get into option paralysis, and that's exactly what it is. There are so many things you could have, you don't know what the heck you want.
Jim Dockrell said, and don't forget overdubs as well. Yeah, there's so many different it's just the options that create sort of like a pause, like you're adding to the equation all these choices, and then that becomes a facet of the whole process extra. Whereas, like, say when the Beatles were recording, plug it in, play, let's capture this, boys, and you know what I'm saying, and it is what it is.
Yeah, and they didn't use a lot of effects because, number one, they weren't there, a lot of those effects. They used different instruments. They were in there with the Mellotron. They were in there with recorders. They were in there with all kinds of different things.
Oh, I was talking early.
Yeah, they did use some effects.
Yeah, then they started getting, but like early, like the beginning, it was just your basic,
Yes, yeah. It was. There was a little bit of overdrive there, not much. But, it wasn't. It wasn't too much. And even when they did start getting experimental and start using all the different instruments, it never became too much because they didn't have all the digital effects. It had to be a practical effect. If they wanted something that sounded like a harpsichord, they had two choices. They could either get a harpsichord, or they could play a piano at half speed and then speed it back up so that the pitch was raised and it had that harpsichord tune to it.
Yeah,
which they did on a few songs.
I remember a quote. I don't know who to attribute it to, but it was with the Beatles, which happens to be the second Beatles album title, with the Beatles. And they said that in the recording, one of the Beatles said, probably John, to the engineer, okay, I want this guitar to sound like a piano. And that piano, I wanted to sound like a guitar. And so the engineer were, and it's like, why don't you just leave? They thought, why don't you just leave the piano sounding like a piano and leave the guitar sounding like a guitar? Yeah. And you ended up in the same place. And John Lennon didn't want that. Probably John Lennon, no. Make the guitar sound like a piano. And I want the piano over there, I want it to sound like a guitar. Go ahead and do that. And
while you're at it, I want Ringo's drums to sound like George singing. Yeah, but it's not just music. I mean, it's in everything. I mean, people have been touching up and doctoring up photos and retouching photos since there's been photography, since they learned how to capture an image on a glass plate. People were dodging and playing with exposures and doing double exposures and things like that. If anything, the people way back when were better at it than the people who have all the digital stuff, because I can easily go online and I can get the exact same photo editing software that these absolute artists are using. But if I don't know how to do it, I suck at it. And that's me. That's where I'm at right now. I don't know what I'm doing. I don't know how to do it. So you can easily tell that the photo's been doctored. But you look at some doctored photos from pre-digital age when it was all done in the dark room with multiple exposures and dodging and filtering and things like that. If anything, they were better at it because it was so hard to tell, because it was all on that paper. It couldn't be faked. It's right there in front of your face, even though it was faked. So the digital may be easier to get a hold of and easier to use, but it doesn't make a person any better at it.
I don't. Well, I agree with that. But as far as easier to use, I remember when I first got Photoshop, I forget which version, but it was a long time ago. And I'm by no means anywhere even close to, I don't want to say competent. I guess I'm competent in a basic way. But the features included in Photoshop, even back then, are so astronomical.
Right.
That I remember walking into a Barnes & Noble because I had just gotten the Photoshop, and I was working with it and stuff, but there's so many buttons. And so I went to a Barnes & Noble, went up second floor. It's a massive Barnes & Noble with escalator and your frappe, cappuccino little den, and they play soft
twinkle ding dong music.
Yeah. And they have a CD music little area. This was a long time back. In the beginning of the 2000s. I went upstairs, or whenever the Photoshop, I went upstairs and found a whole aisle of Photoshop for dummies, Photoshop for this. And you opened up those books and it was like volumes of information for different. And I didn't buy any of those books. I went back home. I said, screw that, but I sat with it, and it took me a long time to learn the basic things that I do know, and I keep learning everything. But I guess my point is that there's all this availability in one particular product like Photoshop, and that is multiplied throughout with all these different programs. We do have a lot of options available, but like you said, if a person, you have to commit to so like, for instance, you work with programs that I don't know, even though I can understand broadly from the outside, because you're trying to get with your CNC, this done in the actual world, and you need to create it, meshes and all the, although I can understand broadly because there's similarities slightly kind of, but I have no background or discipline study in it, so that to me it's a foreign language. They're all like little different languages, and there's so much that it depends on what a person wants to get to,
and it comes back to your point earlier when you said there are just so many options. You reach that point of paralysis because what do I do? And to be honest, I can remember having that feeling when I first got my first computer plugged in and went online for the first time. It's like, okay. And we're talking about 1998. So the internet was still fairly new to the public. And there were a lot of the old GeoCities and tripod homepages. If you were anybody, you had a GeoCities or a tripod homepage. And that was about it. But because the big company, Google wasn't around, there was no YouTube. So all the big companies, I mean, you couldn't just go to Sears.com and look at a catalog. Sears didn't have a website.
Right.
And when they did invent one, and when they did put up a website, it was the corporate office's website. You could learn who their CEO was and how their stock performed this year, but you had no idea. You had to order a catalog, and you couldn't order it through the website. They gave you an address that you could write for a catalog or call this number. So But it was that same feeling of, okay, I'm online, and I opened up Netscape Navigator and I said, now what? I didn't know where to go. Netscape was a web browser and it was a search engine, and you could search for stuff. But when you can search for anything, what do you search for? I had no idea what I even wanted to do with it.
And no previous, because we're into it now to a point where we know that we've created habits, right? So there's endless amounts of websites out there, literally.
Yeah.
Endless to the point that you can't go through them in a day, 2 days, 3 days, a week, a month, a year, infinity, as one human being.
Yeah.
But we set ourselves into our little comfort zones. So we have our go-to places, but there's so much more out there, but we're used to it now because we're into it some 20 some odd years. But
well, and
but back then you didn't have any precursor sort of like concept of what to do.
Yeah, exactly. You know, it's like you've been given a box, you've been given blank paper and a box of 64 Crayola crayons with the sharpener in the back of the box. And they say, there you go.
I forgot about that. That's the first time I've remembered that since forever that you said that.
Yeah, I always thought that was the coolest thing in the world to have the crayon sharpener in the back of the box. I never had one.
It was awesome.
Yeah. But it's like, okay, now what? Now what? You have to have some idea of what you want to do. And if you don't have an idea, it's valueless. It's worthless. But to compound that issue, we now have people who are of legal voting age in this country, US, who were born after Google was founded and went public and went online. So they have never known a life without Google and without the internet. So if an idea pops into the brain, it's real easy to just open up a web page and type that idea in, and you're off. There you go. You know, and it doesn't matter what it is. You can look for Dalmatian puppies and you'll find 62 bazillion different websites and references for Dalmatian puppies. Oh no, I want to look up wheatgrass. Okay, you plug it in and off you go. There's probably just as many pages about wheatgrass. So you still have all those options. It's just now you have a little bit of guidance, and because there are people out there to service that niche. You know, we were talking about old tech just a couple of minutes ago and talking about satellite dishes and this, that, and the other. Try to find a VHS player. Try to find a VCR. They haven't made any since 2016. They stopped making them in 2016.
I'm just trying to find a cassette player. I've been looking all around for it. I've got such a mess, but I've got cassettes that I want to try and transfer. I already know what to do, which is a little, what is it, 8mm or what's the small?
For movie film?
No, for audio cassettes.
Oh, for audio cassettes? Yeah,
the
you
mini
just gotta
jack.
you just got to get the what is it, 3mm plug to plug into your input side on your computer to play through that.
I gotta find the actual cassette deck.
Well, they still make them. I mean, you can get stereo cassette players brand new today. They still make them. You can get them on Amazon all day long. You can't get a VCR. Now, when VCRs, I remember my very first VCR I bought, I made payments on it through the PX. I was stationed at Fort Ord, California. This was back in 82, 83, 82, something like that. And it was like $700.
Crazy.
And then pretty soon they couldn't give away. I remember you could go to Walmart when they were starting to close them out, and you could buy a brand new VCR for $20.
I remember.
They're back up in that $700 price range now. If you look on eBay, or you can find used ones on Amazon. Used, guaranteed, excellent condition, new inbox or whatever, but they're in the $500, $600, and $700 range again. You know?
Unbelievable. It's just the like we've talked about, the scarcity of the situation.
Yeah. And that's why companies, there are a couple of companies that are out there that you send them a VHS tape and they will send it back to you, and they will either set up a Dropbox where you can download the video, or they'll send it to you on a thumb drive, a flash drive.
A lot
They
of
will
those,
copy that for you.
yeah, a lot of those videos require one to purchase their own, from back in the 80s.
Yeah, exactly. You
So
know,
there's a lot of that stuff that'll never see the light of day.
there's a lot that will not see the light of day. But I'm still an old school guy. Criminy, I got a cassette player in my car.
That's crazy, Mark.
You know,
That's crazy.
but I got a ton of cassettes, so why not?
You still have your cassettes?
Yeah, I have cassettes. I have CDs. I've got a player in the car. Why not? You can still get a cassette deck. I've still got a fairly decent. Excuse me, hiccup right in the middle of that. I still got a fairly decent stereo in the other room, and with a 100-watt amp on it. That's what the computer in that room is hooked up to, and that's what I play YouTube through and everything, or my iTunes music or whatever.
Those old stereos
Mm-hmm.
do have there's a certain sound and vibe to it that is not the same as pressing a digital button.
Mm-hmm.
People can argue that the point, it depends, but there was a certain process because you had to physically make a certain amount of various moves to get your music up and running, depending on whether you were, using the turntable or whatever. It was different. There was something cool about it. But again, even with that said, the digital thing, I just don't see a way around it. I am totally like,
I thought I was Mr. Big Shot when I got the 5-disc CD changer for it. With the turntable, the 5-disc changer, and a cassette deck, and all that other good stuff.
Those were big deals back then. My friends, they would take it to the car audio guys to install those multi, and yeah, man, I got my CD changer, and check it out, man. And then he'd press the button and it would cycle through and it would tell you, and then it'd start playing the CD. Look at that. And I thought it was really cool. Oh, wow, that's cool. Like, I did not have that in my car. You know what I had? I had a CD little tray disc where you pop in your CD, you close it, and there's a little mini jack that connects to the car stereo. And you press the button on the thing and you set it on the side and you'd be driving and it's all coming from that thing. Whereas my friends had the bomb, they had the whole, it was funny.
Dude, I had one even worse. My car stereo, you couldn't plug anything into it. I went to Radio Shack and I bought this little unit that you plugged into the cigarette lighter. And then you plugged it into, I had my Discman with a CD in it. And then you tuned your FM radio to a certain channel, and that little thing would broadcast from the cigarette lighter up into your radio. So you could play your CDs through the radio. And the reason I'm laughing about this is because we were going through boxes. We've been slowly going through storage and get a box here and a box there and empty it out. I found that setup.
Oh, that's great.
I'm like, oh my God, that's my CD player. And I can, plug it into the cigarette lighter and play it. I can use that in the Saturn. And I looked outside at the Saturn. It's like, that car hasn't even been registered since 2016. I just don't drive it. So why are you getting all excited, man? I need you to just sell it. I don't do anything with it. So,
earlier you were talking about, I don't know how it was, but the thought stayed in my mind. Are there items that your elders, dad, grandparents, just family members had when you were a kid that you saw as novel and completely fascinating, something that left an impression? Like, I'll give you a simple example to kick it off. My grandfather, we would go to the corner market and stuff. He'd buy cigarettes. I'd buy. One day, he said, "Here, let me give you some money so you can go buy candy." and my grandfather pulled out of his pocket a plastic oval-like thing with a slit in the middle, and he pressed it, and it opened up, and there was coins inside, and he went, and he gave me some money, and he closed it, and I was like, holy smokes, that is bad to the bone. To me, that simple, as a little kid, seeing that for the first time was like, wow. So stuff like that.
Yeah. And it's very, very similar. My grandfather on my mother's side had a money clip.
Oh, that's cool.
And I just thought that was the classiest, coolest thing you could imagine to have. Because, everybody has a wallet.
Yeah.
But I mean, he'd reach into his front pocket and he'd pull out this silver money clip with the bills kind of folded up.
Yeah.
And he'd pull one of them. There you go, son. And fold it back up, put it back in his
That
front
is
pocket.
so cool.
Yeah.
To see that as a kid, you're like, what the heck is going on there?
He keeps his money in his front. I just thought that was cool. I thought money clips were cool. And don't ask me why. I've never had an interest in it. I don't care but I had one uncle who smoked a pipe.
Okay.
And he had one little corner in the living room and where his recliner was, and that was his smoking chair, in air quotes here. He would sit in that corner and he would tap his little pipe. He had the glass ashtray, and there was like a big wooden knob in the center of this ashtray. And he would tap his pipe on that thing. And he would take him 15 minutes from the time he sat down and picked up his pipe before he struck the first match, because he'd flip through. He had about 4 envelopes of different tobaccos over there, and he'd put one, he'd put a little bit in, take a little bit out and kind of rub it through his fingers, and put it into the pipe, and then he'd fold the envelope over and tuck it back in. Then he'd stick his thumb down in there, kind of tamp it a little bit. The whole time he's talking and gesturing with a pipe. I don't think you can really effectively gesture to someone unless you're holding a pipe.
Right.
It's that thing in your hand, and they'll turn the stem around and point at you, It's like, and this, and this, and this. And you're like, oh, okay. That's real authority there, man.
That's so cool, though.
And
those are impressions.
Snip it down and everything and stick it between his teeth, and he'd hold the match in his hand and take it out and start talking, and he'd kind of lean back and strike that sucker. And when that match got up to about here above that pipe, the room would go silent. It's just like everybody, the buildup was there. Everybody was waiting for this moment. It's like, will you light the damn pipe already, Frank? Get it going. But that whole process, it was like a ritual after dinner, sit
That's
down
hilarious.
in the chair and light his pipe. But
that leaves an impression, right?
It did. I mean, God, I'm 60 years old and I'm remembering this. That was my Uncle Frank. And he passed away oh my God, he passed away in the mid-90s. But I was a little kid and I remember this. It was wow.
As a kid, and you're looking at you have no point of reference other than what you're seeing and that is a big deal for a kid, the input.
Yeah, it really was. I mean, it makes a lasting impression on you. But and I've never been interested in smoking a pipe. I don't care about all the paraphernalia, and there was a ton of paraphernalia involved in that pipe. Boy, if he took that sucker apart to clean it, it was on. I mean, you'd think he was rebuilding a carburetor or something, because newspaper out over the kitchen table, and he'd have all these pipe cleaners and brushes and scrapers and little sticky things. It's like, a welder cleaning up his torches and everything to get ready for a big job or something. It's like, holy cow, man. But it was just that whole process to just sit back and watch that guy, which is like, holy cow, man.
Yeah, my grandfather had a couple of pipes. I remember he had an actual like corn cob pipe, and he had just a wooden pipe. I can't remember if the tip of it was white, I think it was, and the rest was like a wooden color. But he had pipe, but it's not like he smoked it all. I never really saw, maybe once saw him smoke it, but it would always be sitting, there in the living room and stuff. My dad, let me see if you have an experience like this. I don't know. So this is just a quirky thing, but back in the day, he'd have the Planters peanut jar sitting next to the bed. And I remember playing as a kid and coming into the room, like a little tornado. Ah! And I said, "Oh, Dad, can I have some?" He says, "No, that's not for kids. That's for adults." He kept it right next to it. So he never allowed me to eat the corner of the bed Planters peanuts ever.
I don't know what the deal is with that, but my grandfather, again, on my mom's side, he kept a little tin of the mixed nuts on his nightstand.
What the hell? It's like a little
I don't
treat.
know what that is. I don't know what that is, but that's I don't know.
Isn't that funny?
Yeah. And now let me ask you this: was your grandmother the type to have the candy dish in the living room?
100%. Oh, dude,
with the lid on it.
The yellow wrapper butterscotches.
Yeah.
She had a tray full of that always.
Yeah.
Always. Yep. And let me just tell you this. I'm going to tell you this, since that years later, even till up to like 5 years ago, as I was cutting the lawn, I would still find underneath the grass frickin' wrappers, dude.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I said, that was my grandmother.
Yeah.
She'd walk around the yard, maybe get one, she'd just drop it. And it'd stay under the ground. Dude, that's incredible. Yep.
Yeah. It's it was always the butterscotches and always the Brock's brand for some reason. And until around Christmas time. Then did you ever have the hard candies that looked like ribbons that were squished up together? Then she would get those. I always thought those were cool just because they looked neat. They all tasted the same, but there'd be different colors in there and everything else.
What is it that everybody from back then, I guess that was the same product, everybody? I mean, I'm sure there were other options, but that seems like a staple, the butterscotch.
Yeah. It was just popular. It was just popular. Well, she was born in 1920. So you're talking about somebody who was raised during the Depression, and any kind of candy, any kind of sweet was a luxury, because you just didn't have it. She told me one time that they never went to bed 100% hungry, but there were plenty of nights, or they never went to bed without eating, but there were plenty of nights where dinner might be a turnip or two. It got that low. Her dad was a bootlegger. He ran a still and would sell homemade whiskey to the banker in town, and that was how they made their cash. Whenever they needed a little bit of money, he'd run a load and run a batch and sell it off to the banker, and the banker would sell it off to somebody else, and that's how they ate. But
I don't look unfondly at bootleggers in that category, because to me it was,
when you got to feed your family, you got to feed your family. No,
I'm saying it was criminal back then, but it's like it was too. You can't condition people to without rebellion. You can't expect people to. Alcohol, I mean, rotted fruit that ferments, animals eat. I mean, it's just a natural, and excess, that's, you got to deal with that kind of stuff. Like, I don't know. They say that it was, it was, like a religious thing as well back then. I don't know exactly the detail. I have not looked into it, but I've read that, they wanted to put a stop. They pushed it through temperance or something like that.
Yeah, prohibition. Yeah, it was back during prohibition, but and when prohibition was lifted, that was basically the end of it, because there was really no market for homemade booze anymore. But it was, just all corn whiskey. This was back in Panola County, Texas, just real close to the Louisiana border there. She was born in a little town called Carthage, Texas, and it was right in that area where all this was going on. So, and the law basically turned their head the other way because they knew that these folks were basically subsistence farmers. And, yeah, you can sell eggs and you can sell, produce and you can sell poultry and what have you. But when everybody around you is doing the same thing, you don't make a whole heck of a lot of money. I mean, there's only so many people who can sell eggs and make a profit. So you do what you got to do to live. But yeah, I mean, we think we've got it tough. So my whole point on this was that to her, any kind of a sweet candy like that was a luxury. And I mean, until her dying day, she had candy in that candy dish sitting on the coffee table in the living room, and anybody walk in the door, I mean, it was just almost like it was a thing. You walk in grandma's door and you headed straight for that coffee table, you lifted that lid and you got a piece of candy. And then you went up and gave grandma a hug, if she didn't meet you at the door or what have you.
Unbelievable. It's just an incredible thing.
And the other one was the Nutcracker in the nut dish.
Yeah.
Around the holidays.
Yeah,
you had the big, it was like a red enamel bowl with a wooden knob in the center, and that had the Nutcracker and all the little picks in it. And it'd be full of like walnuts and hazelnuts and pecans.
We had the standard just two armed, toothed sort of Nutcracker, and then we had another one that had a receptacle with the two arms, and you'd crush it, and then you'd flip it over and just dump it on your hand, and then pick out the good stuff. And we'd have a bowl everywhere, every house, except in our scenario, we had the nuts, but we also had what I've mentioned before, which are those flat, sort of like rectangled chunks of like sweets, which is called a turrón, which was nuts in itself, mixed with I don't even know, caramel, peanut. They had different types.
Sounds good.
Yeah. And so you could either pick out one of those or you get the nuts. The kids usually would go for those, pancake.
The sweets, of course, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, kids, we want sugar. Give it to us. Doesn't matter what it is, so long as it's sweet.
So let me share with you the one that I wanted to share with you.
Okay.
I don't know if you've heard, but this is kind of weird. And by the way, in keeping with the fact that one of our most popular episodes is something to do with the lizard people, I forget the title of the thing for some reason.
Rendezvous with the lizard people.
Rendezvous with the lizard people. Dude, there's people so we have a whole conversation about that, a whole episode, in fact, and people leave comments on that one. Mm-hmm. I don't know if you've gone and seen.
I was there earlier today. Yes, people leave comments on that.
And they are invested in that concept. Yeah. And you see them, yes, because the Andromedans and this and that. And you know that in the Third Galactic War, blah, blah, blah. And it's like, whoa, we were just, and people just totally, well, this isn't as, outer space, but it is weird. And it's something that really happened. So somewhere in, let me see, I'll tell you where it's at. Kazakhstan. Okay. I don't know if you've heard this before. Years ago, there was something strange that started happening to the people in a specific town in Kazakhstan, where they would drop over on their way to work, taking a jog, sitting on a park bench, at home, in offices, and fall asleep. Everywhere, randomly. And it had continued and continued and continued and never stopped. In that town, there's a situation where people fall randomly asleep, and they've taken people to the hospital and checked. There's nothing wrong with them. And they started worrying, like, what's going? Could it be some radioactive stuff? They checked, and there's no more radioactivity than other neighboring towns that do not have this situation. Well, is it something genetically going on? They don't know to this day. But in one particular town, the town is. Let me see if I can. It's called Kalachi in Kazakhstan, and it says that this disease has only been reported in that remote village.
Okay, they're calling it a disease, huh?
They said the disease is probably non-communicable. Communicable.
Okay.
That was a mouthful.
So it's not like, carbon monoxide. There's not an underground coal fire or something like that then.
They don't, and it can go for days, the sleep, weeks, and it varies. But people get in that town are the ones that come down with that. And if you leave that town in neighboring, and this is a remote town, but if you leave that town to other towns in the area, whatever that means distant wise, they don't experience that whatsoever. And it's the weirdest thing.
Huh.
Yeah. Very weird.
Huh.
They've not managed to figure it out. I just thought it was an interesting thing. I'd meant to tell you about it a long while ago. So like it says, more than 140 people in 2 tiny villages were hit by, it says 2 tiny villages now. Mystery of Kazakhstan sleeping sickness solved, they said in 2015. Well, I'm behind the, they said solved. Let me see. Well, we can all learn about it together. Let me see. It says solved. So
we try to stay up to date on the Trampled Underfoot podcast, even if it's 6 years later.
So it says since March 2013, the illness had affected more than 140 people in that town. And the villagers would fall asleep suddenly, is what they're saying, even while walking, waking up, memory loss, grogginess, weak headaches. Some fell victim more than half a dozen times, and so some would go sleeping for 6 days at a time as well. They the sick people would appear conscious and can even walk, but all the same they would fall asleep. And snoring. So they'd snore. So it sounded like a really deep so it affected old and young. Some reported nightmarish hallucinations.
Sounds like carbon monoxide poisoning.
Even pets were not immune. Pets would fall asleep. I'm getting to the point of I'm skimming through.
Yeah.
Doctors tested people who suffered from it. The mysterious and it defied all explanations. So they said maybe it's counterfeit vodka and it's the after effects. A genetic term for brain illness. Also, they were looking into interfax, or it's called encephalo. I can't even say it. I'm not even going to try. So many suspected the nearby uranium mines. So sleep disorders and such. The uranium mines were closed. There was concentration of carbon monoxide. So let me see if I can find the answer to it. Let me see.
Don't you just love those articles that go on forever?
Well,
They finally give you the money shot there.
So it says now the mystery has at last been solved, and the case does indeed lie in the uranium mines, they said.
Okay.
After analysis, the results of medical examinations of all the residents, researchers concluded that it was caused by heightened levels of carbon monoxide and hydrocarbons in the air.
It sounded like carbon monoxide poisoning because there have been several cases of people who have sworn that their house was haunted. And it was turned out that they had faulty boilers. and only when an accident happened, the boiler get repaired, and all of those, everything went away. The quote unquote haunting went
Went
away.
away.
It was carbon monoxide poisoning.
That would, you know, that would ruin so many horror movies. Let's keep that one on the lowdown.
Not every case, but I mean, enough cases to where it is something that they now look for.
I love how you left a little window open for the horror.
No, yeah, because there are no. It wasn't for the horror fans. It is the case. I mean, not every case of somebody claiming a home is haunted has a boiler or has a source of carbon monoxide.
How do you answer that one when your mailman is floating about 4 feet above the air and his eyes have turned glowing green and he's saying, How do you figure carbon monoxide on that one?
I just call that Wednesday because that's my mailman, you know. But yeah, I mean, there have been several cases of quote unquote haunted houses that turns out they weren't haunted at all. They had faulty boilers or faulty sources of ignition, faulty furnaces, and carbon monoxide was getting into the house, and it was causing hallucinations for those of you who can speak. And hallucinations cover more than just the visual. It's audio too. Mm-hmm. You will hear things, you will see things, and just have a feeling of dread and shortness of breath, and I mean headaches and all this other kind of stuff. Just exactly what I mean. You were going down the list with all those symptoms, and I'm like, that sounds like carbon monoxide poisoning.
And in fact, that's what it was. Boy. So, anyways, but you see, and this is a good, just to wrap up. That's a good example of. So I had something for you, which was that. Obviously, I did all my research because we found out together online, and I didn't know where. So that's you us. Can actually, but you see how funny that is.
Up to the minute.
That's how it works. But you can see something online because now there's that too. If it weren't for dating articles, which you would get in papers, newspapers, and books, you would have that. But online, you know, you could see something and not necessarily. You could read a title. Or a little sort of like brief description, you know, you take off, you've got that information, you don't know when it happened, this and that, you don't know if there's a follow-up unless you really delve into it, then you share the information like I did with you, although we did it, you know, the right way, and honestly we went through it, and it's entertainment, but you can see how that could become a problem when people are sharing all this information. There's no dating involved, so you can't necessarily say.
Or they don't even look. I mean, Linda has one friend, and God love her for doing it. I mean, I mean no insult to her, but if she sees one of those missing children things online, she will post the heck out of it without even reading it, and she will repost it and repost it. And Linda's had to go in and tell her a few times, these kids were found 2 years ago. Everything's great. You can stop posting this one. You know, it's taking a little bit of information and going off the deep end with it. You know, I mean, God love her for doing it, but check it out. Find out what's going on. Read the story before you dive in. You know.
Yeah, because there's, you know, because if so for certain people, if they see it, and it's reasonable. It's really reasonable. If you see it flash in front of you, the most reasonable thing is to think that it's relevant and current at the moment, without this extra. But we know kind of sort of better now.
But if you scroll down just a little bit, you'll see update. Children were found well and are returned to their parents. And then the date was 3 years ago. It's like, oh, come on, man. Read. It's right there. They're not hiding it from you. It's right there. Just scroll down. Little wheel on the mouse.
Well, no, but this is a good example of, you know, and obviously what harm, because we're as far as can be from Kazakhstan. But this is a good example of me sharing this story. And there was more to it. There's always more to it. But I had just gotten to that point. And I thought it was interesting. But the mystery was left unsolved for me as well, even though the answer is there.
You introduced me to the mystery and solved it right there for me. So I've got total wrap up and total closure right here, live in front of a mostly live audience. So, it's great for me.
See how that
But
works?
it's cool. I mean, I love it. I like it that way. Some things I don't want long and drawn out. I just want, give me the punchline now.
I've been holding that to tell you that
Uh-huh.
for a few months now. It would come up, but I
Uh-huh.
never went, like I read it.
Uh-huh.
I didn't read that article. I just looked it up now. But I had read it,
Uh-huh.
and I was like, oh no, you know what it was? I saw it on a YouTube video, and they ended it. They ended it without telling the solution. And then I said, oh, that's freaking interesting. I'm going to share that with Mark one day. And the months rolled by. But so the YouTube video, because they were doing the mystery thing, they didn't cap it off with, oh, and by
Right.
the way, my mystery channel has revealed that there's no mystery at all.
Oh, yeah. Well, it probably was a different video they made 2 years later.
Right.
And you just hadn't got there,
Right. So it's like, all right.
Yeah. And that's the other problem with YouTube is you can watch a video that says, purple people from the planet, Megadon have landed on the White House lawn and, this is what they said. But you get to that end of the video, you go, oh, that was really cool. Purple people. Fabulous. But you don't see the video he did 3 days later to say, well, we were mistaken.
Right.
It was a bunch of mopes from Chicago who came over and painted themselves up purple, but it was really convincing, man.
Right. And then all of a sudden, you out the gates, you have the conspiracies, and then a whole society, group of people forming.
And I know we're ready to land the plane here. And
T-shirt printing.
You know what? I'm going to save this for another day. I'm going to save it for another day.
However you like, man. I mean, it's not like
I'm going to save it for another day. All
right, fair enough. So we're gonna land.
Yeah, we should go ahead and do that so we can talk to the chat with the folks out here in the chat, the live chat.
All right. So listen, folks, we thank you for enjoying this episode with us. We go live every Tuesday, East Coast 9:30 p.m., West Coast 6:30 p.m., and that's every Tuesday. Trampled Underfoot Podcast here on YouTube. We're on Spreaker as well, and we have we have the YouTube channel. We also have our Facebook page, Trampled Underfoot Podcast, on Facebook, and we'll see you guys next week. But we're also sponsored by
Steve Nealon, the man, the myth, the legend, the man behind the curtain in the Emerald City that is Harneal Media. Look, it's just you and me talking here. Now, serious, if you've been thinking about getting a website, you've been thinking about setting up a web store, maybe you want to design some merch and sell t-shirts, and you want to do baseball caps and things like that, or maybe you make something. You are an artist at heart, and you have developed your artistic streak to the point to where you think you can make a go of this. Steve Nealon is your man. He can help you set up a web store. He'll do as much or as little as you would like for him to do, and he will charge accordingly. Very, very, very reasonable prices, budgeted for the maker in mind. That's Steve Nealon over at harnealmedia.com, the man who sponsors the Trampled Underfoot Podcast website.
All right. Well, that said, folks, enjoy the rest of your week. We'll catch you here Tuesday, 9:30 Eastern, 6:30 Pacific. Have a good one.
Peace. All right. Okay, let's see. Linda says she has more than one friend like that. She's become the fact checker. So you're the one. You're the one putting up all those things in front of pictures. You're the independent fact checker. All right, you and I are going to talk.
You're the one. What's that song? You're the one.
Still the one.
Still the one.
Still the one. Okay, Frankie says, I almost died from that when I was a little kid. I was going to assume he meant carbon monoxide. They said if Grandma didn't take me to the ER, I wouldn't have made it another half hour. Dude, you're supposed to open the garage door before you start the car. Pro tip for you. Okay, let's see here. Rick French says post a link. He'd like to read about that town in Kazakhstan. You think
Okay,
you think
but
it's worthy of putting over on the Facebook page?
I don't know that I like the. Well, it's from the Guardian, so
Okay, Guardian UK. Well,
yeah,
you can put a link in the chat over there, and he can go check it out on his own.
I'm gonna do that right now.
Okay, cool. Thank you. Going back through it here. Yeah, Linda has a little white. She has Grandma's little white bowl that Grandma kept lemon drops in it, and it still has lemon drops in it to this day. Yes, we go down. We got one store. There's a little boutique candy seller. I can't remember the brand name. We go down and we buy. She gets a bag of lemon drops, puts them in that little candy bowl, and then occasionally, just to humor me, have you ever heard of or have you ever had horehound candy?
No, no.
Okay, it's now I'm not sure if it's a root or a leaf, but the plant is called horehound.
Is it with a W?
No, no, no W.
Okay, all right. No,
And they make like a tea out of this stuff, and they make candy out of it, and it's got kind of almost but not quite a bitter root. It's like a root beerish taste with a little bit of a bitterness to it, and it's much stronger than root beer. And I like it.
So it's chewy, right?
No, these are hard candies.
Oh, I'm looking at it now. Wow, it looks interesting as heck.
Yeah, these are old people candies. You know, pop one in your mouth and suck on it for half an hour, and it'll eventually go away.
Well,
kind of like those butterscotches. You know.
Yeah. Wow, I don't know that I've.
It's just one of those things, you know.
They look like dates.
My great grandfather on my father's side, he had that. He chewed tobacco. The man had no teeth, and he chewed that plug tobacco called Day's Work. And he'd take his pocket knife out. It came in little squares, like about the size, about a quarter of a deck of cards. Rectangular piece of tobacco. It was just layered tobacco leaves compressed into this big old thing. He'd take out a pocket knife and he'd cut off a hunk of that, pop it in his mouth, and he'd chew on that for hours. He had no teeth, but it didn't matter. And he had horehound candies in a little in a Planter's Nut can. He would dump them out of the bag and into that Planter's Nut can because you could put the plastic lid on top.
Right.
Or no, it was a tin lid at the time that slid over the top of the can. And you guys want some candy? I went, sure, Grandpa. And he was old when I was little. He was born in the 1800s.
Wow.
And take one of those, and that's where I developed a taste for that. So
that's freaking incredible, dude. I had never really heard of it, and it looks really cool. Just it's something I would not mind trying that. I'm gonna look to see if that's something you get. Is it good?
I think it's good. It's very strong flavor, and not everybody likes it. It's kind of like black. It tastes absolutely nothing like black licorice, but it's kind of like black licorice in that you either like it or you don't. There is no in between. There's no gray area, you know. But it doesn't taste anything like licorice. It kind of reminds me of Smith Brothers cough drops, but without all the mint and eucalyptus and other crap in it.
It says horehound candies. See, I'm trying to even clean it up as we. Horehound candies have traditionally been used as an appetite stimulant to soothe dry, scratchy, and sore throats, and to relieve intestinal gas.
Those I didn't know about. Now, I did know about the itchy and scratchy throat, but I thought that was, because you suck on a peppermint or a lemon drop or a butterscotch and it does the same thing. I kind of thought it was the same thing.
They sell it locally, it apparently, or at least they say at Walmart. Okay, that was interesting.
Rick French has a question for you. Tonight was the first time that I heard Eloy refer to a CNC or woodworking at all. Does he have a woodworking background? I'll let you answer that.
No, well, I have a woodworking background in as far as that I did. I started doing repairs next door, house repairs. I did move into working at a cabinet shop. I mean, I guess it's a woodworking background, but I wouldn't say I'm a, you know, uh, I've done a lot of woodworking actually, but my mind isn't in it right now, so I'm not focused in it. But yeah, I've done woodworking. Growing up, it's not like I did woodworking, but yeah, I've done a ton of hundreds of projects actually, which I've recorded and stuff. So
yeah, go ahead and plug your YouTube channel. Eloy's got double the number of videos I've got up. It's Rockin' H Woodworks, isn't it?
No, dude, that's another guy.
That's Drew. You're Rockin' Woodworks. That's right.
Son of a gun.
See, I threw the H in there and I didn't mean to.
Sorry. Maybe I should just take his. Well, it doesn't. It's fine.
Yeah, you can't take his. It's Rockin' Woodworks.
Yeah.
Look,
was actually.
Look for the skull with the beard.
Yeah, that's like me. That's like my. I mean, fair enough. It's a lot of people have made that mistake, but I can't believe that you did. It's like me calling instead of Mark Lindsay CNC, Mark Lindsay's what is it? 3D printing. You got to go check out Mark Lindsay's 3D print. Whatever, yeah. It's okay.
Well, my mistake. I apologize.
Oh no, it's no big deal. I really, it's a totally natural. In fact, don't go check out my channel. Stay here because I don't do.
You've got good stuff over there, man. Eloy's got some. He's got some good stuff over there. You made a honeybee. And to me, this is one of the coolest projects you've done.
It's one of my source. That's the one that closed my woodwork. Now I don't do woodworking. I do genealogy on my channel.
He made a honeybee, kind of inspired by Bobby Duke. Bobby Duke made a bug. I don't remember which insect he made. I really don't. It was a beetle or something like that.
A beetle, yeah.
And he used resin to make the wings. Well, Eloy did that too. He got on his lathe. He made a honeybee with resin wings, and it's freaking amazing. It's excellent.
The abdomen, the whole thing. But
yeah, the head, the thorax, it's flipping amazing. He's got all kinds of cool shit over there.
Yeah, so remember, visit Rockin' H.
No, not Rockin' H. Forget the H. Rockin' Woodworks. I don't know where that came from, man. I do not know where that came from.
Yeah, a little bit more of that pizzazz. Just threw it in there. It's like throwing a quarter on the table and watching it dance. You said rockin', and then you said H.
Well, anyway, he did post photos. There's a whole video over there on it, Rick. There's a whole video on it.
Yeah, I wouldn't put too much emphasis on the whole thing. Again, what I'm doing lately is I'm more wearing a investigative hat. So, but if you want to check it out, it's
Rick wants a link. Rick wants a link to the video. While you're trying to find that, Frankie CNC said, my grandma and her sister always had tea-berry chewing gum. I loved tea-berry gum. I don't know if you remember, was it made by Adams? Did they make the tea-berry gum?
I personally don't know, dude.
There was tea-berry gum. There was also Pepsin gum. There was Blackjack, the black licorice gum. Oh man, it was good stuff. I love tea-berry gum. I haven't had that in years, and I got to go find some. No, it was Beeman's that made Blackjack and Pepsin gum. Who made the tea-berry? Man, I got to look that up now. I haven't seen that in years. Boy, I was way wrong. It was Beeman's made Blackjack, Pepsin, and clove gum. tea-berry.
Tea-berry sounds like a good. I think I've had tea-berry gum. I just don't. Oh, do you remember that gum that you'd bite into and like a gel was inside? Which one was that?
Oh, it's called Freshen Up.
Was it Freshen Up? Wasn't there? It had like the gel inside.
Yeah,
was it Freshen
It's
Up?
called Freshen Up.
Gosh, that was good stuff. I mean, it was okay. Looking back, it was still fun to pop. But it's not like, but whatever.
Okay, yes, tea-berry is still made. And it's now made by Garrett's. The company back then was called Clark. I finally remember Clark's tea-berry gum. But they had blackjack, Beeman's Pepsin, clove, and then tea-berry. Okay, that settled that. I got to get me some.
Oh, I wanted to tell you the other day. I forced myself to watch a Rolling Stones performance, but it was from Ed Sullivan when they were still where they had not yet began to gyrate. And if they would have kept with that, like I watched the performance and Mick Jagger, he does a little bit of the clapping, but he does a little bit of a jerking of the head. You can see the beginnings of like he really wanted to explore body movement. Even then, you could tell like it was waiting to happen. It was just like a volcano. But in that instance, and with Brian, was it Brian Johnson on Brian Jones?
Yeah.
He was on the flute. He could play guitar better than hell. But it was cool, and the sound was. And I said, man, if he would have controlled himself. Yeah. But no. And then the next video, he's like going like this. And it's like, what the hell, dude?
And you hit the nail on the head. Control yourself. Because that was, the Jim Morrison story about the Doors going on the Ed Sullivan show. Yeah. Ed Sullivan was a by the book kind of guy. And you did things his way or you weren't on his show.
Yeah.
And in fact, he had enough pull. He made them change the name of the song they were singing from Let's Spend the Night Together to Let's Spend Some Time Together when they did it on his show.
Yeah.
But he had enough pull to where they knew if they didn't do it, they just wouldn't be on and they wouldn't get any exposure in the US. So there was a lot of that going on. I mean, Mick Jagger had to kind of rein himself in, but yeah.
No, but the actual, because I'm sure he could, there's, just so in that moment I looked and I said, you know what, this, because there's also a thing, I can't sit there and listen and the picture, which we've talked about, but they were okay there. Everything was cool.
Yeah.
And then like you can see all on the playlist, then
all hell broke loose.
Yeah, he just went fantastical. And it was just sashay to the left, strut it to the right, and it was like, dude, come on. and the funny thing is, people in the audience are like, more. And you know what I'm thinking? I could care less that 100 million people are thinking that that's cool. Like, I could care less. To me, it's ridiculous. I can't abide by it. Can't do it. But if they're just concentrated on the music without the flash and pizzazz, leave that behind.
And see, you know what? I never went to a Stones concert. I never cared about going to a Stones concert. But if Jumpin' Jack Flash came on the radio, I'd turn it up because I dug the song.
Yeah.
Tumbling Dice, I'd turn it up. I dug the song. I didn't know what these guys looked like. I didn't care. I was hearing it on the radio. So.
Well, exactly. But we've talked about it before, but long story short,
many times.
Many times. But long story short, them just rocking it out. Freaking no problem. Bad to the bone. Enter 1970s Mick Jagger and on.
Well,
with like frazzy phrases on the elbows and like knee joints and just fantastical to the left, and then over, and
Yeah.
and then he this is the face, like he'll look over to the crowd and go, but
Yeah.
here's what makes me cringe when he does this, and the crowd is looking, and they're like, yay, and then he'll go to the other side of the crowd and he'll do this, and the crowd will be yay, and I'm thinking to myself, what a bunch of beeps.
Yeah.
Can you fill in the blank what I said? There are a bunch of beep
because we've
beeps.
had this discussion several times. So what I'll do is I'll eventually get you to start listening to Mark Knopfler. There was one tune that I of his that I know you would love.
See, I have no problem with Mark Knopfler, and in fact, you know, I have no problem with the bandana thing, the tennis. Although it did distract me early on, and it was just one video, like you always point out, one video, man.
Uh-huh.
But that one video, remember the MTV?
Well, yeah, you know, it does it. It does it to everybody, and that is part of the problem. MTV ruined music for a lot of people because that particular tune was overplayed on MTV because they were mentioned by name in the song.
Yeah.
It was a recurring theme in that song, and it was just played to death. It's like every fifth tune was going to be Money for Nothing by Dire Straits.
One of the early songs on MTV was Video Killed a Radio Star.
And that was the first song ever played on MTV.
It was, so that song to me is complete genius, to be honest with you. I don't know if you've seen it played like a few years back by the original band. Have you seen it?
Yeah. The Ruggles or something like Buggles or something.
Dude, they're kick-ass, in my opinion. I mean, I know that there's better things out there, but the concept of the first song that busted out of MTV is saying that is totally what happened.
Yeah, really. Yeah. But they would get, because in the early days of MTV, videos were few and far between because nobody knew it was going to be a thing. Pretty soon it got ginormous, and you had music videos that had the budgets of small movies, you know, and so they played what they had, and they played a lot of concert footage because that was about all they could get their hands on. Then people started making music videos, and a lot of them were pretty lame, but yeah, it just died. So MTV killed music for a lot of people because you now got to watch people perform it, and it wasn't always what you thought it was going to be.
People aren't as like the problem. So prior to the MTV, the cool look, a lot of people just simply don't have the cool look, but they're kick butt musicians. But you put them on a video and you're like, man, this is freaking ridiculous, these people. And you become, you know, you become biased. You know, I know it's shallow as hell, but that's what happens. Yeah. But then there's the people with the look. Here's what happens. There's people that may not look cool, but they're cool because they kick butt. But you put them on video and then people are like, oh, look at these people. Forget that. Then you have people that are cool looking.
That are kind of mediocre.
That are mediocre or like crap. But the fact that they're just cool looking takes them over the threshold. Yeah. And freaking, you know, so video helped those people.
Sure.
It didn't help, you know.
Well, video helped the people who were smart enough to get in on it in its infancy. It launched a lot of names that wouldn't have otherwise got a whole heck of a lot of radio play. But because the video was cool, people liked the video, they brought it in.
Yeah.
Case in point, the Fabulous Thunderbirds.
Okay. Yeah.
They were a kick-ass band. They only had 2 songs that ever did anything.
Tough Enough?
Tough Enough was one of them. They only had 2 songs that ever did anything because they made music videos. They didn't make any videos for anything else. They thought, we got the videos out there, now let's see how album sales go. And album sales for that album were okay. They were pretty good. Yeah. But they never made any more music videos, and gone.
You need to, as part of the whole thing. Well, that's not necessary because there's a whole underground world, but it'll only get you as far as it'll get you, unless it becomes some sort of crazy phenomenon. But I can easily. There's a lot of videos on YouTube. And it's funny I'm saying videos where they just show the album cover, and you have your whole album being played.
Right.
Not famous people that we might know, but sort of like, garage bands,
Right,
exploring the sound, and people are digging that. You can see it in the views that people. So, it's an interesting thing. Just the fact that,
but people have moved beyond, because I mean, you can look at a music video. You go on to YouTube and just look at any group's YouTube channel, and you can tell the videos that were made in the 80s, the height of MTV's popularity, its rise and fall. Mm-hmm. You can instantly identify those videos because they have that 80s look. Mm-hmm. And everything had to be a theatrical release. You couldn't just play the music and have the band up there playing. There had to be some story, some hidden message in the video, or, so you'd have guys like, you'd have bands like Toto doing their song Africa, and the lead singer, he looks dumber than a box of rocks, sitting in some bamboo hut, supposedly in Africa, in some library, going through books and trying to sing. It's a cheesy video. It's probably one of the dumbest things you have ever seen in your life. Dude, if they'd have just got up and played the tune, it'd have been just fine. Because the tune itself is okay, but it's a dumb video.
I gotta tell you this, dude. I gotta tell you this. Mm-hmm. I don't know if you've seen it or not.
Dancing but it was in the streets.
no, put that to the side. Although that's a good one, but we had a running joke, my buddies and I, because there was a video from back in the day, and it was so cringy that you need to see it. You need to see it in order to internalize and then expel like a bad, virus. You need to see it and then puke it out as soon as you. So, and it is what it is. So there's a music video. If you type it in on YouTube, "Free Me" by the lead singer of The Who, but this was a solo album.
Roger Daltrey, yeah.
Roger Daltrey's "Free Me" music video. And I'll just preface it by saying this. The most corny, this rivals the Mick Jagger frolicking around the stage. It's at that level. It's probably, it's where this video is, this music video is where Mick Jagger wants to be. This is where Mick Jagger's dancing would eventually lead to. So in the video, dude, and I like this musician, but that is just horrible. Like, I like The Who, and I like he has like a netting type shirt, and like he's strapped into a like some sort of device, and he's strapped in and he's fighting it. Free me. And then in one scene, there's a glass in front of him, in between him and the camera, and the whole song is "Free me" and "Free me" and "Free me." And dude, you don't want to be that free. And he hits the glass pane, and then like the people there in the crew dump buckets of milk, and the milk is dropping and he's dancing on the screen and the milk is rushing, and he's got the gnat, and it's the most horrific, nightmarish, laughing. Dude, my friends and I would put that on just to laugh the whole way through. You have to see it. I will not post that over just basically "Free Me."
Well, if the cringiest one I ever saw was, the tune "Lean on Me," Dobie Gray.
Yeah. When you're not Strong.
Yep, that's the one.
Yeah.
This was before MTV. This was 70s, and I think it was shot for a TV show. But it's just Dobie Gray
Yeah.
out in a park
Mhm.
wearing a turtleneck sweater.
Okay.
But the way it was shot was so cringy. It's like, man, why they do that to him? This is a good song. Why they put him out there? It's a hot day. You can see he's sweating bullets, man. This
Yeah.
poor guy it's a hot day and he's in a turtleneck sweater in the sun out in this park,
Yeah.
roasting his butt off, lip syncing to the tune because it's the studio version that's playing.
Yeah, it's tough.
And it is the most cringy, the angles they shot at, the distance shots and everything. Oh my God, it was just awful. It's like, why you do that to him? Put him in a studio sitting on a stool and let him sing like they did, like Otis Redding used to do. Something like that, man. That was very cringeworthy for a good song.
It's unfortunate.
Jim Dockrell says Daltrey did the teen idol thing for all it was worth. He wasn't the only one, but you're absolutely right. He did everything possible. He convinced him to give him the long fringes. I don't know if you've ever seen his outfit when they performed at Woodstock.
Yeah.
His white leather jacket with the real 3-foot long fringe that he just about busted his ass on several times.
But they were cool. They were cool at Woodstock. Like their performance to me was bad to the bone.
He said in an interview later on that he about beat himself up with that thing.
But I'm sorry, man. This music video, if you've not seen it, go check it out. Free Me, Roger Daltrey. The worst thing is because it gets worse and worse because he's singing about freeing himself, free me, and he's like in every contraption and he's trying, but then he's got the little mesh shirt and he's like free me, and as it continues, and then to make it the culmination of free me is him freed in front of a pane of glass and milk just dripping, like covering him, and he's swooshing in it, and he's free me, and it's like, what the heck? What is going on, dude? Yeah. And my friends, dude, the deep satisfaction of laughing that we experienced for a long time, like it was the go-to, was just amazing, dude. It was because it's so. I mean, my goodness.
I see cringy things like that one time, and I don't want to see it again. Because I just don't like that feeling. I know some people like the cringy stuff for entertainment. Yes. I'm not that guy. I'm just like, oh man, no, get me out of here. Get me out of here. Ruby slippers. We got to go home.
My goodness, dude.
Okay.
I think let's finish
at that
on a high note.
Okay. Okay, you want a good tune to listen to, good Mark Knopfler tune. I'm going to throw it out for everybody. Jim Dockrell recommended Telegraph Road by Dire Straits. Good tune, excellent tune. But one of my favorite Mark Knopfler tunes is called What It Is. That's What It Is, excuse me. And it's one of his solo tunes I think it's off of the Sailing to Philadelphia album. I may be wrong there, but it's about a trip he took just to Edinburgh, and he is just stuff that was going through his mind in Edinburgh, Scotland. It's excellent tune. I really dig it. I think you'd like the guitar work in it. He was asked in an interview. In fact, I think it was Brian Johnson from AC/DC. He has a series, or had a series, on British television called On the Road with Brian Johnson, and he would just talk to different musicians and singers and performers. It was an hour long, just talking back and forth and swapping stories of being on the road. And one of them he did with Mark Knopfler, and he asked him about his playing style. He says, your playing style is kind of like a cross between a claw hammer, like you're going to play the piano or play the banjo and finger picking style. What do you call that? He says, I call it a guitar teacher's nightmare. But that's the only way I know how to play.
Yeah.
So, well, anyway.
All right.
Okay.
All right, folks. Enjoy the rest of your week. We'll catch you here again next week on Tuesday. And have a good one.
Yep. Later. See you next week.